Good evening. My name is Ben Guess, and I'm the Executive Director of the ACLU of Ohio. I want to thank you for joining me this evening and giving me a reason to wear a tie for the first time in nearly 9 months. I am speaking to you tonight from the Max Wall Civil Liberties Center in Midtown Cleveland, where normally our offices, cubicles, hallways, and conference rooms here, as well as at our office in Columbus's German Village, would have been teeming with dozens of in-person meetings, volunteers coming and going, coalition gatherings, election watch night parties, and debrief sessions in the lead up to and aftermath of this critical election season. But like all of you, since mid-March, our staff has been working from home with just minimal in-office coverage. Still, never before has the ACLU been harder at work, fighting literally around the clock for the rights of those in Ohio's jails, prisons, and youth detention centers, where this pandemic has ravaged with little to no concern from our elected leaders for the health and safety of persons caged there and those who work there. We've been fighting to protect women's reproductive freedom after malicious and opportunistic political forces sought to use this pandemic to shut down abortion care in our state. We've been fighting for the release of immigrant asylum seekers in Ohio who have not been convicted of any crime, but are being held against their will during a global pandemic after fleeing persecution, war, and unimaginable violence in their homeland, and seeking protection for their families and themselves, only to face unimaginable treatment here when they presented themselves for legal asylum in the United States. And we've been fighting for free, fair, accessible, and secure elections, both during the extended March 17th primary and the November 3rd general election. The ACLU of Ohio filed multiple election-related lawsuits this year. We operated the Election Protection Command Center during early voting and on Election Day, fielding escalated calls from more than 600 Ohio voters. And 107 ACLU of Ohio volunteers, along with our staff, had real live text conversations with over 130,000 Ohioans to inform them of their registration and voting rights, polling locations, and troubleshooting any last-minute questions that they had. I couldn't be more proud of the personal and professional dedication, the strategic efforts, and the precision work of our 30 staff members in Cincinnati, Columbus, and Cleveland, who have unflinchingly been in the face of any obstacle or demand that the year 2020 has thrown at us. Our team, alongside our dedicated board of directors and our generous supporters, comprise a civil liberties family, a fierce, long-standing civil rights movement that we call the ACLU and the ACLU of Ohio. Here in this state, a motley cohort of freedom riders hailing from all of our 88 counties in the state. We're not only heady and gritty policy wonks at the ACLU, we're also people who fiercely love and care deeply for our fellow human beings, for our neighbors who look and believe and vote and worship like us, and equally as much for those who do not. We're the nonpartisan people of fundamental fairness, of principle, who dare to create a more just, better, and stronger union with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to take a moment now to invite you to introduce yourself by going to the chat icon, and please make sure that you're sending your message to both panelists and participants, not just panelists, and share with everyone your name if you wish. You can just use your first name if you'd like, or your full name, and where you're joining us from tonight. And in a brief few words, if you will, what you love, admire, and appreciate about the American Civil Liberties Union. Again, that's your name, your location, and one or more reasons why the ACLU matters. And in addition to that, I want you to feel free to use the chat feature during my address tonight to ask any question you may have. And we have colleagues at the ready who will respond in real time to make sure you get the answers you're seeking. So as you're dropping your hello into the chat, I want to invite you to do a mental exercise. I want you to deeply consider this. What would the last 4 years have been like, or felt like, or God forbid, turned into, if there had not been an ACLU, if simply the ACLU did not exist? Can you let yourselves imagine that? Can you allow yourselves even to go there? No ACLU Immigrants' Rights Project to fight back against the Muslim ban or the separation of families, against the constant demonization from those from other countries, those who speak other language, and demonstrate life from another culture. No ACLU to come to the aid of children kept in cages. None of that exists. No ACLU of Texas or Arizona or Southern California on the southern border. No ACLU of North or South Dakota defending indigenous people's rights. No ACLU Women's Rights Project to push back against efforts to control women's bodies and to subjugate them both at home and in the workplace. No ACLU of Ohio to take on our Ohio General Assembly when it's very clear they need to be taken to court. No ACLU First Amendment folk to stand up for the free press, for the right to protest, for the right to petition your government for the redress of grievances, for the right to worship or not to worship in the tradition, custom, or manner of your own desire and choosing. No ACLU to fight for your right to love and marry the person you choose and not be fired from your work because of it. No ACLU exists to fight an extremist administration through legal challenges, through organizing the resistance in our communities, educating young people and older people alike about their rights to assemble freely and to speak openly their truth. No ACLU. I don't know about you, but the thought of that absolutely scares me to death. Because one thing we all now know, the unimaginable can definitely happen. Unless the people of this state and this nation say, no, not on our watch. I am so deeply grateful for the countless numbers of people who came to join our fight over the last 4 years, who felt compelled to join and support the ACLU in their desperation, perhaps, and because they needed a place to invest their hope. Engaged newcomers have surged the ACLU over the past 4 years into a prominence and a proximity for great impact now and into the future that prior incarnations of the ACLU family never could have imagined. But I want to say a special word of gratitude and tribute, really, to those of you here tonight who were already ACLU members and supporters before November 8th, 2016. Because you knew then, and you still know now, that the price of liberty, the price of freedom, the price of justice is constant, perpetual vigilance. Because no matter who is president of the United States, no matter who is governor of Ohio, no matter the makeup of our General Assembly, they all must be held accountable, every single one of them. Democracy doesn't just happen one election every 4 years or 2 years. Democracy happens every single day. Our participatory democracy, if it is to survive, it demands our fullest attention, not just on our Facebook feeds, but how we align ourselves with others, especially impacted communities, the most vulnerable among us, how we invest our money and spend our time to demand racial justice for Black and brown lives, to demand gender justice, to demand full inclusion of people with disabilities, to fight against the criminalization of poverty, against Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, transphobia, and the demonization of the immigrant, the stranger, the other. Just inside the entryway of the ACLU building in Cleveland, where I am now, there's a framed poster that reads, "No matter the results in November, we will keep fighting." Now, I have to tell you, we didn't just put that up in September or October, and it's not coming down anytime soon. In fact, it stays up year-round to remind us that one election is just that, one election. Now, don't get me wrong, one election can have big-time consequences. We all know that, and we've all lived through that. But if we're going to save and protect this democracy, we had better fight like hell 365 days a year. When Donald Trump was elected, he had campaigned on a platform riddled with attacks on civil liberties. He promised cruel political onslaught against the rights, safety, and well-being of all sorts of people. The ACLU, we took those threats seriously. And on his first day in office, we published a full-page ad in the New York Times and other major dailies saying, "We will see you in court." Well, we weren't kidding. Today, the ACLU has filed more than 400 legal actions against this administration. And I don't know how anyone could argue with a straight face that the ACLU has not stood up valiantly to every single attack against our Constitution and the people it was designed to protect from government's excessive overreach. We haven't prevailed every time, but our record is very solid. And no one doubts that the ACLU's missional clarity and perseverance are real. But please know this, the ACLU has sued every presidential administration for the past 100 years, be they Democrat or Republican, and we do not plan on stopping that anytime soon. As we begin to turn the page from one of our nation's most frightening, perilous moments for civil liberties and civil rights, there is so much damage to repair, but there is also so much progress to demand. The ACLU will always focus our attention on moving freedom forward, because it's never been about one party or one person or even one president. It can't be. We will do what we have always done, hold our leaders and our government institutions accountable, every single one of them. That's why the ACLU is committed to ensuring President-elect Joe Biden is the best president he can possibly be, and that he prioritizes and expands civil rights and civil liberties during his time in office. And never fear, we will hold his new administration accountable to build on the progress we have made and the progress that we, the people, will demand, just as we did the last administration, and just like we will do the next. The ACLU of Ohio, alongside our 53 sister affiliates in every state, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico, we are ready to fight locally and nationally to push our progress. We are working on comprehensive racial justice policy platforms to press upon the incoming administration to move swiftly on concrete actions that will boldly address racial injustice, disparities, and oppression, addressing the root causes of racial inequity and the lasting impacts of systemic racism by expanding voting rights, providing reparations, and ensuring criminal legal reform and economic justice. In addition, we will continue to pursue advancements on key issues, including immigration, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer rights, and reproductive freedom through the next 4 years. But let's not kid ourselves. The bulk of the change we must push for will come about at the state and local level, where our state legislature, our police departments, prosecutors, city councils, governor, our attorney general, our secretary of state hold much, much power over the issues that impact everyday Ohioans in substantive ways. In this past election, Ohio's one-party supermajority power lock actually expanded in both chambers, the State House and the State Senate. And that's beyond disheartening. We need a bipartisan system in Ohio. And we need to keep an eye, yes, on what's happening in Washington. We do need to do that. But we need to keep our other eye and perhaps both of our ears paying close attention to what's happening here in Ohio at the State House in Columbus. For starters, we will continue to fight in the courts where we know we can make a difference. Litigation is a powerful tool in our ACLU toolkit, and we're not afraid to use it, and we do. And we will continue to do that where and when it makes the most sense. But at the ACLU of Ohio, we're also convinced that the future of our civil liberties movement in this state, in Ohio right now, is to begin to amass a groundswell of support for the change we demand. This will only happen to the extent we can empower and mobilize everyday citizens to participate in that process, to be engaged in the system, and so that we can follow where they lead us. Legislators and other elected officials must come to know that Ohio voters are informed, and we are paying close attention, and we are amassing great people power with boots on the ground to get our state moving in a better, more inclusive direction. That's why during the past year, the ACLU of Ohio community organizers have made relationships with and brought together literally hundreds of new ACLU Ohio volunteers to get them involved with statewide and local action teams. And you're invited to be a part of this critical effort. We want you to know how you can go to acluohio.org/action to sign up. And we'll be dropping that link right now into the chat, so that you can involve yourself and make sure you're informed about the work that we're doing on a regular basis on a growing number of on-the-ground, in the streets, at the State House, ACLU of Ohio Volunteer Corps. We are now post-election in the lame duck period at the State House. We may need to call on you at any moment to raise your voice in support of or in opposition to last-minute legislative maneuvering through this often crazy and maddening end of the session. One of the bills we're hopeful may find additional traction is the Ohio Fairness Act, which, when ultimately passed and signed into law, will finally protect LGBTQ Ohioans from discrimination in employment, housing, and public accommodations. This bill has gotten further this session than ever before, and we are seeing signs of potential movement during the lame duck period. Together, perhaps we can help push it over the line. We will definitely be staying in touch. We're also deeply hopeful about Senate Bill 3, an important drug sentencing reform bill that it will be enacted before the end of this legislative term. It's one of the many criminal legal reform efforts that the ACLU has prioritized this entire session. And there are signs, perhaps slight signs, that supporters are still eager to move it forward before the end of December. And we're hopeful we can join in the effort to make that happen. And we will also continually push for critically needed bail reform in Ohio, where almost 70% of persons detained in our local jails on any day, at any time, that's about 12,000 people, are being held not for what they have done, but for what they do not have. And usually that is in want of a few $100s, a ransom that not only leads to pretrial detention, that puts them in great risk of losing their jobs, their housing, even custody of their children, alongside hampering their preparation for their case and leading to longer prison time as a result. But it also sets them up for unnecessary plea deals, even for crimes perhaps they didn't commit, just so that they can get home and return to their lives, their families, their children. In the coming weeks and months, we will continue to educate all the ways we can about the urgent need for bail reform in Ohio, for the bipartisan movement that is now pushing for it, how Ohio taxpayers can save between $199 and $264 million annually by just electing common sense reforms that will actually contribute to greater public safety. The way to accomplish this is by broad bipartisan consensus. And we believe that is possible. We do, because it's already happening, as groups on the right and the left are coming together to proclaim loud and clear and strong that our current system is corrupt, it is broken, it is unjust, it is racist, and it is expensive. It hurts families and entire communities. And yes, I won't sugarcoat it. We will also have our work cut out for us to protect reproductive freedom in Ohio. Given the changing landscape of our courts and the supermajority anti-choice lock on our state house. But I can guarantee you this, I will promise you this, we will do everything now in our power and in the future to fight like hell for women's freedom and for their bodily autonomy. We will not be deterred or dissuaded. Finally, friends, I want to leave you with this important reminder from Frederick Douglass. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Now, that's not an endorsement of struggle for struggle's sake, but it is a reminder that our struggle can and will lead us somewhere. It eventually takes us somewhere important. And if there is one characteristic that I find emanating from any and every ACLU person, staffer, board member, volunteer, donor, casual cheerleader, Zoom attendee I encounter, it is this stubborn hopefulness. We refuse to give up on hope. We refuse to. In fact, we still believe we can invest that hope, and it will pay dividends, not just for us, but for all humankind. We must hold on to that. It is who we are. It is the stubborn, hopeful ACLU way. In this election, we were given some good reasons to breathe again and to hope again. But we have to be honest, we were also given yet another invitation to join the long haul struggle. So blessed be that struggle, infused by our individual and collective hope and our active engagement through acts of courageous love, empathy, solidarity, that will lead us one day, perhaps never fully, but always getting closer to the beloved progress we so feverishly seek and demand. Thank you, dear friends, for joining us tonight. If you'd like to continue the conversation, tonight at 6:30 p.m., our statewide action team meeting will be in conversation about the work that is before us, and we will drop that link into the chat right now. We would love for you to join the discussion and get more deeply involved. I know many of you already are. And with that, I will sign off with this. Be well, stay positive, test negative, take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Never lose heart. And hear this, if you are tired or weary right now, that is okay. Because always know that there are others who are carrying wood to the fire for you, for us right now, to keep it burning until you feel up to it again, to join the heavy lift again for yourself. And you will. I know it. Thank you and good night.